Well, thank you for tuning in to the Catholic Gen X podcast, where the three of us still have Pac-Man fever.
Right.
With us is Father Peter.
Hello.
Tom.
I'm not sure I have Pac-Man fever, but proceed.
The only bad thing about Pac-Man fever, I think, was the song.
I can't even remember the song.
Pac-Man fever drive me crazy.
I don't remember that.
You don't remember this?
No.
You never went to an arcade like the 1980s?
I did.
It was the last time you probably actually had like coin change.
Yeah.
Probably Galaga, Space Invaders.
Yeah. None of those were
Star
my
Wars.
game of choice. He's trying to start a fight right off the bat.
I mean, he may be trying to start a fight, but you've been ready to fight.
It's
since
true.
you
It's
walked
true. I'm a
into
little
that.
surlier than normal.
Mhm.
You remember Dragon Slayer? What a disappointment that was. Like, it was this cool
Oh, yeah,
animated,
Yeah.
and you died immediately.
Immediately.
Mm-hmm. Well, and back in the day, we spent
Punch Out. That was my game.
Punch Out was a good game. Yeah, we actually got the Nintendo. They have like a small technology now. It has all the Nintendo games and a small console now too, which is really good.
Is Punch Out on there?
It is. Yeah.
Sans Mike Tyson, correct?
I haven't gotten that far, but I expect. Well, I don't know if he's on there anymore. I don't know who would be at the end. I would expect he would probably be there.
Guessing it looks just like Mike Tyson. Just not
Yeah, just a
called
little
Mike
bit different.
Tyson.
He wears white boxing trunks and black. So
Were you a fan of Mike Tyson's Punch Out?
I played it. We didn't have a game system, though. So I was one of those kids who had to wait till I was over hanging out with friends.
But you knew about blowing in the cartridge.
Oh, yeah. I hung out with friends who had gaming systems.
So was it Father Peter's? Oh, Peter's knocking the window. He keeps putting
Hey,
over.
open the
It's
curtain.
like 6:30 in the
Open the
morning. Hey, you guys got Frogger in there? Can I come in?
Unbelievable.
So Tom, best album in the 1980s.
Best album of the 1980s. I think that's pretty easy because I think it's also the best album of all time.
ABBA didn't have any albums in the 1980s. So.
I think this is an 80s. I think this comes in under the line. Appetite for Destruction.
That's an outstanding album.
Top to bottom, best album of all time. You keep your Sunday, Bloody Sunday nonsense.
We just celebrated Bloody Sunday. The American version last week, and the Irish version was a couple weeks ago. But.
That's right. So Father Peter, need we ask? It's going to be something you too, correct?
Probably.
We're talking best album, start to finish, every track.
I heard the question.
I just wanted to make sure you understood the question.
Probably Joshua Tree. But I think my favorite album in the 80s was Slippery When Wet.
Now that's a quality submission.
Right?
Yeah, that is good.
Here's my problem with Joshua Tree. That's back when U2 was still trying to be in excess.
Oh,
What?
what?
You two never tried to be in excess.
You like how I just lobbed grenades?
Yeah, pulled the pin on that one. I don't even know where to begin with that. So In Excess was an excellent rock band.
They were,
I think they were.
From
Michael Hutchins,
Australia.
but not the
even
best
better.
band
This
from
is like back in the
Australia.
Crocodile
not
Dundee
even
days.
not even the second best band from Australia.
What do you Midnight Oil?
Midnight Oil's better than In Excess.
He's actually
yes.
an attorney, lead singer. Did you know that?
Makes sense. Now, I was never a big AC/DC fan, but I'm willing to.
That's an excellent point. AC/DC would be the best
Yeah,
best band,
that's probably true.
except for probably Silverchair and who else came out of there? Oh, Men at Work.
Ooh, okay. In Excess is now no better than the fourth best. Men at Work, they did some quality stuff.
They could even work in a saxophone solo, and it still sounded pretty good.
Tell the truth, you had no idea what Vegemite was until you heard them. And even then, you didn't. You just kind of said the word, not really understanding.
Because even
what it
our
was.
unabridged dictionaries we had in the library and whatever kind of poor school we grew up in, they didn't have an Australian
Vegemite
version.
wasn't in there.
No, and we didn't have the
No.
internet.
It wasn't until well into adulthood that you knew what Vegemite was.
You were hoping Casey Kasem, the top 40, would somehow give some like reference to what that is, because otherwise DJs, that's the only we would ever
Right.
know.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's Casey Kasem.
Yeah, I know. Either a Shaggy or as a disc jockey. So
Yeah. I don't know if they still do, but one of the stations in town on Sunday mornings will play old,
Oh,
like,
it's 70s on XM or 7. Yeah.
well, it's one
I
of
don't
the,
really have time to
Be-
listen to the radio on Sunday mornings.
Well,
That's
so-
right.
it's day of rest.
Church of the Holy Mattress. Huh?
Tom, in case our listeners are worried, Tom is a very faithful vigil mass attender.
Don't send any
Saturday-
angry email. At least
Saturday
not about that.
afternoon, So
Those are all quality, excellent albums. I would still say pound for pound, Michael Jackson Thriller.
oh.
That's a better answer than his. But come on, seriously, you
That was
don't
a
acknowledge the musical genius of Axl Rose?
I think it's probably one of the best heavy metal albums that came out in the whole
a
decade.
fellow Hoosier. Well, you're not a Hoosier, but you are now. You've been a Hoosier.
He's honorary.
I've been a Hoosier since '96.
At common law, he's been a Hoosier for probably what about?
Common law.
20 years?
You're a common law Hoosier.
I don't think you want that.
91, if you count when I moved here to go to college.
You never went back, did you?
I never went back.
Well, things were.
So I want to go back to this Slippery When Wet. I mean, that's
Oh, I loved
That's
Bon Jovi.
strong.
In the day. Loved Bon Jovi in the day.
yeah.
Well, living on a prayer is what got you to seminary, right?
That's right. And through seminary.
And pick Aquanet for big hair.
Right.
So
Yeah.
It was before. It was clearly before my alternative days. For our younger listeners, my emo days, if you will. Although we were more angry than the emos were.
it's like Robert
So-
Smith, The Cure, kind of.
Right,
vibe.
right.
Oh.
The Cure,
Mhm. Morrissey.
the Smiths,
Yep.
Morrissey, all of that.
This would have been pre Nine Inch Nails.
Oh, there were some Nine Inch Nails in the early '90s.
The Offspring.
A little bit,
Was that a little too angry for
a
you?
little too angry. Again, and that's why I quit. I think Nine Inch Nails, Trent Reznor is a genius, but there's no way I can live a holy life and listen to Nine Inch Nails.
I don't think you can. Yeah, that's it's a different path, I think.
Right.
So this is what we're talking about.
Mhm.
Where do you stand on the Motley Crue debate with "Shout at the Devil"? Because there was always that argument in Satanic Song is like, whoa, they're not saying "shout with the devil"; they're saying "shout at the devil."
Yeah, but like they also weren't saying by lyrics or life that like we're on God's team.
I don't
That's
know. He,
That's right.
What is it? He's the wolf howling lonely in the night. He's the blood stain on your face. I might have messed that up a little bit, but I think they were clearly saying, "Be aware."
Well, yeah, like in the same way that people are like, yeah, I wouldn't do it all over again, but be aware that you're going to end up like me, a complete train wreck.
Vince Neil. Now, not 2022 Vince Neil. We're clearly talking 1986
He was saying,
Vince Neil.
Living on a not living on a prayer, something to believe in. Was that Motley Crue?
No, that was
That was Poison.
Poison.
Yeah.
That's it. Now that song started with, underneath the old neon sign that used to read "Jesus Saves." That's Christian.
We'll leave Madonna out of this.
That's a whole other story. So, well, it is kind of funny how, like, music and, even us growing up, how that had a big effect on, like, our experience and things like that, too. And this is maybe a good transition to kind of think about young people now in the church. Music
Are
is
there young people in the church?
well, and that's kind of what I was wondering. Maybe we could talk about today. Are young people coming to church, or if they've left, why are they leaving?
It's funny you say that. Last week, I was in Washington, D.C. on Ash Wednesday. Went to St. Patrick's,
Mhm.
12:10 Mass, and I said to the guy I was with, I am surprised at how many young Catholics have showed up here today, presumably on their lunch hour, to go to Mass on Ash Wednesday.
So, what is young, like 40 or
Oh, no, 20s.
really
Yes.
Hmm.
A number of them.
15, 20?
Well, it's a big church, John, and it was full, but I
What
saw a lot
percentage
of
do you think?
Jeez.
Like, what's the over under, Tom?
I'm going to say that a solid 20% of the church was
That's really good.
young Catholics.
That is quite good. Have either one of you read statistically as far as like how many what percentage of young people actually do participate and go to mass?
Yeah.
Like post high school?
Like if we, excuse me, look at the millennial generation, which is like 25 to 40, right? It's the smallest percentage of any generation that we've tracked are regular church attenders, and that's across religions. But it's like 7% are regular church participants.
Any idea what it used to be like for our awesome Generation X generation? A little bit better.
I think I'd be interested to see what it was when Xers were in their 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I think right now it's like 25 to 30% of Xers are regular church participants.
So, if you know, I my guess would be the large non-denominational megachurch type business model that they're probably doing the best with that age group. But then is Catholicism doing better than the mainline Protestants, or about the same?
Oh, better than the mainline Protestants. So better than the liberal Episcopalians, better than the liberal Lutherans or liberal Presbyterians. But like the places that are doing best overall are deeply rooted in a tradition. And so you have like this whole resurgence of conservative Calvinists in both the Baptist tradition and the Presbyterian tradition that are like really strong 5-point tulip Calvinists, and those churches are growing.
So was I wrong then that the big non-denominational megachurch, that's not?
I think overall, like your kind of broadly evangelical still has better numbers, but once you take that out, they've been, though, statistically, they seem to not be weathering their recent political flirtations as well as we have.
Was that a pun?
If it is, it went over my head.
I don't think it was a pun.
So
I was trying not to name specific politicians that the evangelical church pursued.
So, Tom, why do you think the non-denominational churches are growing? Why do you think Catholics are leaving and going there?
Well, you have a presupposition in your statement there that Catholics are leaving and going there. I don't. Is that accurate?
I think if Catholics leave, they either quit going to church kind of completely, or they go to non-denominational megachurches by and large.
I don't know.
Father Peter, do you have any insight?
Well, I don't want this to get too judgy and offensive, but I think it's
a question.
I think there is a certain appeal to watered down Christianity, and I think some of those churches, that's what they sell and they peddle, is watered down Christianity.
I think it's also, there's an element of the difference, right? That if Catholic liturgy was celebrated with kind of lukewarm effort, then having a great praise band seems like a really attractive thing. Does that make sense?
It does.
So I think there's a piece of that. And then I think, God bless us, a lot of evangelical pastors are good preachers. And a lot of Catholic preachers are not that good.
Well, your Protestant, to me, I've told you this before, your Protestant background comes through
Yes.
when you preach.
Oh, absolutely.
Your cadence.
I regularly sit down and I'm like, they're going to discover I'm a Baptist and run me out.
Starts slamming his Bible down. And just
What
like
I
in the
got
movie
worried
Footloose.
was when he brought in the big,
This
the
is
big
not true, dear listener. This is not
the
true.
plexiglass box with the snakes. When he brought that in, that's when I started.
So not
There are
true.
still a few of those churches out there, Tom. I've
Not
lived in
true.
places where those churches are. So there's a part of it then, I think, from what you're saying is that we don't know maybe what the attraction is, but some of why they may stay is that it could be the music, could be the preaching. We've also kind of heard people talk about where when you go to a Protestant or like a larger non-denominational church, they're very quick to plug you in, kind of pull you
Right.
in. You're kind of, starting to meet other, congregation members, things like that too. So what I wonder if part of what it is, are they more interested in being entertained than, the primary aspect to be worshiping God?
I think, in my experience, a lot of postmodern Christians, regardless of denomination, judge their church experience on their felt experience or affective experience. So, and they call that being fed, right? Like if they were emotionally moved in a particular direction, then they feel like they had a spiritual experience and they were fed in that worship time. And I think one of the things about liturgical worship is it doesn't necessarily move you emotionally. And that's kind of by design. Like we do these things that we do because they're scriptural or they're traditional or whatever, but it's not an experience designed to evoke an emotional response in you.
So I've never been to one of these, to a service actually, I've never been to a regular service at a Protestant church. I've only been to weddings. But I'm coming from a complete place of ignorance with what I'm about to say.
Go ahead.
Unlike everything else.
Yes,
That's right.
So in my mind, when you walk into one of these, their worship space is kind of like an auditorium.
Right.
And in my mind, it's kind of like going to see the Tonight Show. Right? Like you got here, the pastor comes out and the band's over there playing and they're playing the drums and the guitar. And then it's kind of like a variety show from that point on, right? Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Well, is that accurate?
I think it's accurate for that model of church, that kind of particular seeker or mega church model, that you have a band and you have probably either some skits or some videos. And they all of it surrounds a theme.
Oh, I see.
That then the pastor comes out and talks for 30 minutes or so, kind of explicating whatever the theme of the day is.
Could you imagine a 30-minute homily?
Oh,
I'm going to be quiet. So is that an American phenomenon, or is that something you find, like if we left tomorrow and went to Italy, could we
No.
find a church like that?
No. You do have in Africa, you would have, and some parts of Asia, you would have kind of the music and then multiple sermons.
But is that because of American?
Part of it is we have access to the tech in ways that the rest of the world doesn't. Part of that is, even just boils down to like suburban planning requirements, right? You can just build a sprawling amphitheater if you buy 30 acres of suburban land.
Okay.
So
what about in Canada? Is that movement?
I think there's some up there. Canada has become, though, deeply unreligious.
Right.
So there is something kind of unique to the American character that's been commented on lots of times, that we are a religious people. And even when we leave kind of formal religion, we make religions out of our interests.
I think that's true. I think the other part of it too, you said something very interesting. of where, people being moved emotionally and that being maybe some experience of God. Excuse me. So some of that, could be the sense of the Holy Spirit. But I think part of the trouble with that, the slippery slope, is that we can come to this false conclusion that feelings are facts.
Right.
And so because it's something where, and I do think we live in a time of where I read an article, this is probably 5 to 7 years ago, the human being's attention span is less than like the common housefly. So it's kind of where, like we check our phones, or always, we can't always sit still and things like that too.
I'm checking my phone. Father Peter's up wandering around. There's screws coming out of the chairs.
Tom literally has a screw loose out of the chair. We've known that for years now. But it's something where I think in that regard, it's having to have this constant sense of engagement.
Yes.
And if we're not, then it's something that there's really no value.
Right.
And partly, I don't know this, but my guess would be some young people leave because they don't see the relevance.
Yes.
But being a transcendental kind of experience, between them and God, it's more of how is God or the parish basically coming to me.
Right. And I think there's also that, like, we have to be, as a minister, as a priest, I have to be careful to make sure that, like, what can be relevant is relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so if I'm preaching on pie in the sky theology all the time, and there's a place for it, but if that's kind of what I'm doing constantly, I think people are right to say this isn't relevant to me. And they're right to say even this isn't what preaching should be.
What do you think young people want to hear from a pastor, from a priest in the Catholic Church?
I have no idea. I honestly don't. Partly, like, if I ask young people that, I get crickets in response, or like weirdness, like some sons who will not be named here, are full of great ideas to, like, that I just can't get up and talk about gasoline scented cologne or whatever their current obsession is.
Tiger Panther cologne.
Right.
What? I don't want any follow-up questions on that.
Yeah, go home and ask your oldest son.
I've heard these kind of conversations. So Matthew Kelly refers to this movement as Jesus is my mate.
Mm-hmm.
And he talks about that's one of the most dangerous
Meaning
things
like
we can do.
friend, the British
Yes.
sense of mate rather than.
Well,
like
he's Australian,
spouse.
and that's insensitive on your part. But,
Right.
and I think there's some truth to
Yeah.
that, right? I mean, it's easy to throw this mass appeal. Oh, Jesus says, do what you want and he'll love you. And whereas you're kind of stuck with the truth and
Right.
what we've been saying for 2,000 years.
Yes. I think, like, for me, I work hard to listen to what are the people of the parish dealing with this week. And I work hard then to say, how is Salvation's story impacting what my folks are dealing with this week? And that's where I find relevance, right? Not as much in pop culture references or whatever. It's like, no, this is what you're going to be facing this week in your lives. So let's try this.
So then why did you feel
Unbelievable.
moved by the, you don't even know what I'm going to say.
I don't. I just know it's going to hammer me.
Why did you feel moved by the Holy Spirit to proclaim from the altar that U2 was the greatest band of all time?
Well, that's one of those, like, existential truths you were talking about.
Well, I think one of the questions, at least that I hear a lot with the work that I do, it'll be, grandma, grandpa, mom or dad will come in and say, why is my son or daughter not practicing? I have raised them in the faith. They've, like, gone to parochial schools, or they've, like, whatever kind of co-op. They were homeschooled, things like that too. And for whatever reason, they just don't want to go anymore. They just don't believe. And I think culturally, that's something that continues to happen, not just in the Catholic Church, in other churches too. But maybe it is that it's kind of a question of where I don't know how you reconcile that in your mind.
Well, I don't either.
I mean, as a curiosity, honestly, I don't know.
And I've spent time thinking about what is better is better for the church to maintain, and when I say truth, you know what I mean. I'm not saying that our tradition, what
Right.
we believe to be the truth.
Mhm.
Is it better for the church to stick to that and die on the vine? Or is it better to water down the message and do the more mass appeal and thrive? Personally, I think it's probably better to die on the vine.
I agree. I mean, Aquinas says you only have your conscience, and even if your conscience is wrong, you have to follow it, or you'll be lost. And so I think, like, if we believe this to be divinely inspired truth, this is all we've got. And so even if we die for lack of new membership, we've at least been true to what we really believe.
Right. I mean, I hear people say all the time, well, if Catholicism's going to last, they're going to have to become more relevant. Well, I don't buy that.
No. I think the studies show of young adults who have kept the faith that things they identify as important in that are the parents consistently going to Sunday Mass,
Mhm.
parents who talk about and practice the faith in their home. So prayer before dinners, a regular kind of rosary experience, conversation, or other kind of prayer experience, but regular conversations about the faith, and even to the level of how faith impacts the choices we make as a family or the life that we live. In other words, I think, and I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, but I think a lot of these folks who lament that they raised their kids in the faith took them to church occasionally and sent them to Catholic school.
Mhm.
And I think studies show if the kids are going to be consistent as young adults in the faith, their best chance is that it's more or less Sunday Mass every Sunday.
I see. Well,
We have a lot of cultural Catholics.
Yes. And before COVID, we had a lot of folks who went once or twice a month. And I think most of those folks have kind of drifted away, although church attendance is inching up again. But
well, and I think one of the things we have as a Catholic faith that some of the other, like Protestant brethren or sisters, is we have 7 sacraments. So you could probably argue, baptism,
right.
But other than that, there's really nothing else, right?
Right.
So I think that some of it has to be where, how do young people know that the significance of what sacraments are and how they need that in their life too? They just can't essentially be gods to themselves and just figure it out on their own.
That was a statement. That didn't.
Right.
You're shaking your head, so I don't know.
Well, I'm just waiting for the question. But...
Remember, the microphone can't pick up that nodding head.
So I think that that's something where, what do young people need to know? I think they need to know the truth. I mean, they need to know that salvation is through Jesus, and that's, through the Catholic Church. There's a lot of good as far as, Protestant churches too. But I think what we have to be careful of, though, is that, 2,000 years of Christianity and history is changing constantly, right?
Right.
We're nothing new under the sun. There are some differences as far as technology, but people are still people.
Right.
I think it really get down to it. And to your point, Father Peter, if they don't have faith and have a sense that there is a God and God's plan is better than our own, then we'll never be fully happy. We'll fill it with money, booze, drugs, technology, clothes, all these kinds of things. Parenting, I think in some ways can become a religion, a lot of different kinds of things, sports, where that is your ideology, that is your value system, which is all very temporal, very earthly. So I think that's a real challenge and one that parents don't really know, but I think it is something where, as all things Christianity, we have to look, in our own eye first and see, is there a board there, and that's where we have to kind of start to whittle away. So Tom, we're also in any boards you're working on because it's Lent.
Any what?
Boards as far as whittling away, because we are actually in the season of Lent.
No,
so.
I gave up woodworking for Lent.
Oh, that's good. Well, any final thoughts you think we should bestow upon our listeners that may be struggling with this issue, or maybe some young person that's listening now that is kind of wrestling with, do I come back to the church? Do I consider the Catholic faith?
I mean, I would say it. I say this a lot, but it's never too late, right? Like if you've wandered away, if you've done whatever, it's one of the things I love about Catholicism. It has led at times to some excesses, but there's nothing that can't be fixed in the confessional, and it's just restart. Hit the reset button and come back. So.
I think that's great. There's no time like the present. So, Father Peter, Tom, good being with you.
Always.
Hope you guys will tune in for next time. See you then.
Yeah.